Hi, Gracie Poo. So, last time I read you the first chapter of Escape to Mars, which was written by Billy. This book is funny because the first chapter was by Billy, but the second chapter is by Amber. It goes back and forth. So this is Escape to Mars, chapter 2. I'm not going to pretend to read it in Amber's voice, okay? It's just going to be Grandpa's voice, sorry. Chapter 2. Don't believe everything Billy says. It is true that his mother makes a good lasagna. But he messed that up in his story, so typical of a boy. His mother really did make the lasagna on Tuesday, and she managed to bring it with her to the lab on Wednesday. We ate it cold later that day while the engineers were arguing and yelling at each other. I've never tried the asparagus dish, but I don't believe it's as bad as Billy says. Anyway, this is my account of those days when the Earth was in dire peril. It's not as colorful a story as Billy choking on a Pop-Tart, but it is the truth. Billy's mom says they didn't have any Pop-Tarts that day, so there, Billy. I guess I should start with that same Wednesday, the one where Billy is having breakfast with his family. By the time Billy was on his way to the lab, my dad had already left our home in Melbourne, Florida, for the launch of the new X-2000 shuttle, the Venture, the next morning. It was supposed to be a short flight, once around the Earth and then a landing at Edwards Air Force Base. I was stuck with Andrea, my nanny. My mom had died a couple years before, so Andrea took care of me. She was okay. It was summertime, so there wasn't much to do but play inside. Only tourists and crazy people go out in the hot Florida sun in the summer. Dad didn't let me watch television. He said it would rot my brain. Like that would really happen. But Andrea was a stickler for rules. That's why Dad hired her, I'm sure. So I was left with puzzles and colored pencils and books. Just as we were cleaning up my afternoon snack, Dad came running in the front door and started barking out orders. "Andrea, Junior's coming with me," he said. I hate it when he calls me Junior. I think Dad only calls me that when he's in a hurry and he forgets that I'm a girl. "I want her ready to go in 2 minutes," and then he ran back to his bedroom. Andrea knew better than to ask, "Go where?" which would have been a sensible question. No, she sent me straight to the potty while she packed my Little Mermaid backpack with my poncho, a couple drinks, and a brown bag filled with snacks. Auxiliary dinner, she'd have called it. She was waiting for me with my sandals as I came out of the bathroom. Just then, Dad rushed up. His shaved head and perfectly fitting flight suit should have made him look smart and militarily proper, but somehow he looked haggard, worn, and disheveled, as if pockets were hanging out and zippers only half done, even though they weren't. Dad never looked like that. Maybe it was something in his eyes or a droop to his shoulders. He held a small duffel bag filled with overflowing and strange knickknacks and curios. I saw a picture of Mom sticking out of the top. He looked at me and then at Andrea, and suddenly I thought he might cry. But then he hugged her. He actually hugged her. My dad doesn't do that kind of thing. And without a word, pulled me out to the car. He was quiet the whole ride, but a couple times I thought I saw a tear in the corner of his eye. At the time, I thought it was the wind blowing over the windshield of his blue convertible. As we got closer to the launch pad, Dad started muttering to himself. He always did that when he was in a big hurry without time to prepare. He was reviewing checklists and making sure everything was in order. Suddenly, he slammed on the brakes and pulled into a 7-Eleven. A minute later, he tossed 3 bags of ice into the trunk of the car, then pulled around to the back. "Sweetie, I don't have time to explain, but I need to put you in the trunk, okay? It won't get too hot while the ice is in there, and I won't leave you there for long." Suddenly, I was really scared. My heart pumped so hard, it felt like it would burst right out of my chest. But Dad wasn't in the mood to talk about it, so I climbed out of the passenger seat and lay down in the trunk. Dad bent over and kissed me on the forehead. "It'll be okay, sweetie." Billy says riding in the trunk of the car would be fun, but he's a crazy boy. If he'd been in there, he would have been crying the whole time. Every bump in the road hurt, and it was dark as coal. The air smelled foul, and the melting ice made a puddle right where I was laying. To make matters worse, the corner of Dad's tackle box kept bumping me in the head. Finally, the car stopped. I heard Dad get out, and then I heard his voice whispering into the trunk. I'm going to have to leave you there for a few minutes. Don't worry, I'll send somebody for you. Just stay quiet and don't make any noise. Everything will be okay. Everything will be okay? Sure. That's why he ran home and ordered me out of the door without a word of explanation. That's why he snuck me past the guard and why I'm sitting inside this trunk like a fish in a cooler, scared out of my wits. Sometimes dads say the strangest things. Of course, a few minutes to Dad is really hours and hours. The ice all melted, and pretty soon I was soaked from head to foot. It kept me cool for a while, but soon it felt like a jungle in there, and it felt funny to breathe. Finally, after days in that trunk, I heard footsteps outside, the rattle of keys, and somebody opening the lock. I was already wet through, and I was scared to death, so you can understand what happened, and how cruel it was for Billy to say I smelled like a toilet. That's what he said. The very first time he saw me. What a creep. As soon as the trunk opened, I was blinded by the sunlight. Somebody grabbed me and lifted me out. I tried to struggle, but one of the men clamped down on me like a vice. Then my body was in for another shock as I went from the sauna of Dad's trunk to the freezing cold air-conditioned NASA hangar. After a few nervous twists and turns, the guys who were carrying me were always looking this way and that, like they were sneaking me somewhere I didn't belong, which I didn't, of course. They opened a door to a dark room, set me on my feet, pushed me in, and closed the door. That's when Prince Charming walked up and said, "Phew, you smell like a toilet." All right, that's the end of chapter 2. Hope you liked it.